Well, I am always about the community in the schools. I understand that it takes a village to educate a child, but it also takes a village to keep a child safe. And so I think one of the solutions that we need to bring is be more proactive than reactive. It's great that we haven't found any guns in our schools, but how long has it taken us to get to this place? I believe that if we would have engaged the community more, if we would engage parents more, so that we can do wraparound preventive measures for our students, then we wouldn't have gotten to this place. And so I would like to see the investment into community conversations. I would like to see partnerships with experts in the industry of safety, in which they do. We have so many buildings that are kept safe in this community. Well, obviously they are doing something that we were not doing. And our children are some of our most precious commodities. And so we have to give them the best. And so I believe is building bridges with partners that are expert in the industry, bringing parents in that we can be proactive and learn about how they feel our children could be safe. And then as a board, what we do is we take those suggestions, we weigh them out and see what we can implement. We cannot be an island to ourselves. And I think in some aspects, the failure of CMS has been because they have been an island to themselves. They, in some level, have alienated our community. But I believe there's some great things that happen in CMS, but there can be a greater CMS. And so these are just some of the solutions that I would like to see implemented, that we can have a better school system. I think if we would have listened to it previously, the backpack situation would not have gone through, and we wouldn't have wasted close to $500,000 on clear backpacks. But I believe the metal detectors are good, but there are other things that we can do in long term, but then also the short term solutions that we can implement. Well, I think the thing about it is not one person has the answer. It has to be a collaborative effort. And I believe if we have trust within our community, and then I believe we have partnerships with trust. If we see something, we'll say something. Unfortunately, we have a lot of evil people in our world today that mean harm for those that deserve good. And we have to be more diligent in making sure that our systems are there. Unfortunately, there are individuals who want to utilize resources or take away resources from where they're intentionally put in place for. And there is a collaborative effort that are going to be able to help answer these questions. It's just not one person, it's just not one group, it's just not one set of solutions, but I believe we have to look at some short-term solutions and long-term solutions. That's one thing. I was a product of the New York school system, and unfortunately as a young man, in my school, we had metal detectors, and that was back in the late 80s, early 90s. It took all of this time to get to Charlotte, but I have seen the effects of that. Metal detectors are not the only answer, because as a young man, I saw friends opening back doors and passing weapons into the school. I saw them sneaking things in there. So we have to look broader than just metal detectors. We have to build a base of trust within the school body, so students know that this is your school, you have to keep it safe, as well as administrators, as well as teachers, but then the community. When the community gets diligent about not at my school, then you have parents who show up, just like the fathers who are showing up at school and say, not at my school. You have a rotation of different things that can happen in our school system when the community says, I'm going to invest in this school because I believe what they're doing at that school. So we have to build a bridge of trust, confidence in our school. It can't just rest on the school system. It has to rest on the community, because guess what? The community sends our children to that school. Well, it's hard to say what they did, because I wasn't in the room, that helped them come to that decision. But I know as a board member, I'm looking for 3 C's. I'm looking for character. The character of the next superintendent. That superintendent needs to have the character that is going to reflect the educational values of our community. That's why they elect us as a board, because they want us to represent their educational values. That next superintendent needs to have the courage to do something different. The thing about it is this: if you do the same thing thinking you're going to get a different result, it's a definition of insanity. So that next superintendent has to have the courage to do something different, the courage to impact our educational system in a way where it's going to close the achievement gap, and it's going to touch the students where they are, that they can rise above their situations and come to the educational place where they need to. That next superintendent has to believe that all children can learn, not some children, not because of their barriers of their socioeconomic state, but all children can learn. We have seen this across America. It doesn't matter how poor you are. It doesn't matter how rich you are. Everybody has the right to learn, and everybody can learn if you give them an environment to learn in. And then also, that next superintendent needs to have the fortitude, the competency to be able to lead an organization of this size. So there needs to be proper training and education of that superintendent. But then also, there needs to be a place where we see experience will be able to be proactive instead of reactive to situations. Experience is a great teacher. And what experience does is, experience teaches you how to identify what's coming down the pipe so that you can head it off. Experience teaches you how to see the people around you, knowing that you're not the smartest person in the room, but you're able to lead them based off of your experience. And so there's so many things that we are going to be looking for in this next superintendent. But one thing that particularly that I say this superintendent needs to be able to do is have a solution to combat the learning loss as a result of this pandemic. Because of this pandemic, our children have exceeded great learning. They've experienced great learning loss. Well, what is your solution, and how are you going to build a great morale in those who are in the schools, that they'll be able to combat that learning loss? And so there's so many things we need to look at it. We can't rubber stamp our next superintendent, because we need to have a superintendent that's going to be here for the long haul. We're timed out of those who are just staying for 1 or 2 years. We need somebody who's going to have the fortitude and the energy and the competency to lead us for the next many years, 10 to 20 years, so we can build a system that America will be proud of, and a system that our students will be proud to attend. Well, I can't just wait on one, but I'll be honest with you. The first thing I want to learn is about that person's character. I want to learn about their values, because the values at the top, they spill throughout the entire organization. We have to start there. If we can start there, then we can get to all these others. And then also not just asking them, but I want to be able to investigate where they have come from in terms of their work experience and what everybody around them is working, not just the ones at the top. I want to go and speak to some of the people that worked in the system that they were a superintendent over. And I want to find out, how did you feel about this person? Because everybody at the top is going to tell you everything wonderful. But the ones who work in the trenches, the ones who are in the classrooms, the ones who the superintendent agreed to policies that affect their everyday living, those are the ones who I want to speak to and say, what did you think about this person's character? Did you believe that they were going to be able to lead you into where the educational values of this community needed to take you? I want to start there. And then I believe we can go and look at all the other things that are going to be very, very important. But that, to me, is going to be a starting point, because character and leadership, everything rises and falls on leadership as well as character. And if I'm going to send my children to that school, I want to know the character that you have, because our children are not objects, they're people. If your character is not right, then you'll treat them as objects. But if your character is where it needs to be, then you'll value them as people. And that's what I think all of us need to do in leadership at Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. Well, the thing about it is, I understand that we've been graded. Currently, we have 50 low-performing schools in Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. But in comparison, we are a very different Charlotte-Mecklenburg system than those other districts. We have so much variety. 108 individuals move to this area every day. And so we are experiencing so much growth, and we're so much of a melting pot. The thing about this is, with the achievement gap, you can say has been attributed to what is current, but that achievement gap was so large before the pandemic. It was so large before we had the influx of people coming. I believe what we need to do is we need to really, really concentrate on the core cultural competencies in our schools. We can throw so many things at it, But if we're not making sure that our teachers are proficiently and adequately skilled to teach the subject matter that they are teaching, then we're not going to get what we need to get. If we're not engaging our students and having active learning in the classrooms, then we're not going to be able to close that achievement gap. Richard Elmore, who is a well-known educator at Harvard, he says this in his paperwork, that these are things that we need to make sure that we're looking at in order to combat the achievement gaps that we see. As a community, what I believe needs to happen is we need to engage parents. We need to engage parents and teach them how to be able to reinforce what our children are learning in our school system. So it can be a continual thing that when they go home, we understand what they're talking about. There's so many constituents that I talk to, and they don't know how to do the math one. They don't know how to do the science. It's a different this, it's a different that. Well, it's our responsibility to engage them. At one point, there was a family engagement where the department in CMS, where they were helping parents to understand what the children are learning. We always have to remain students in life. That's one of my keys. I'm always going to be a student, no matter what area I get to or what level of success I get to. I'm always going to be a student. And if I can encourage my child, and if I'm willing to learn a little bit more so that I can help tutor them there, then I'll do that. But we also need to engage the community. There are so many community organizations that are doing well, that are waiting to partner with CMS, that can help for after-school learning, that can help for tutoring on the weekends, stuff that CMS may not have the capacity to do, but our community can do it. So it takes a village to help close this achievement gap, but CMS has their responsibility, and I want to build policy that's going to help us to close that achievement gap and bring some attention there. There was a time where there was a consultant that CMS brought in and asked the current board, how much time do you spend to achievement gaps and how much time do you spend to the education of children? And they said, I didn't spend much of that time in our conversations because there were so many other things going on. As a board member, I want to make sure that we further that is our main focus, the achievement. Now we see that the board is paying attention to it, but I think a little bit too late. And we need to continue to enforce that to go on. Well, unfortunately, over the last year, CMS has lost 6,000 plus students to charter schools, to private schools, to at-home schooling, and we're seeing that. I believe that a lot of these individuals or parents are making that observation and making that move because they see the opportunities for a greater amount of varied education. When you look at charter schools, one of the things that I want to be able to forge when I'm elected to the board is I want to be able to lift up vocational and educational training. I believe that vocational and technological training is going to help that gap. Not all of our students traditionally will be able to go into or want to go into a college setting, but there are some vocations. There are some trainings that we can help them at. So I want to be able to offer that. But also when you talk about Black and brown students, when you look at the offerings across the board of the county, not all communities are getting the same offerings in education, in proficiency in education, in programs that are being offered. And I think that's hurting individuals want to come. In terms of our opportunities in which we need to make sure all children have all opportunities comparative across the district. It's one district. One thing that I did see, and unfortunately I saw, is I live in Huntersville, but at one point I worked in West Charlotte. I was a partner in the schools of West Charlotte. It was two totally different school systems within that one district. And I want to make sure that that does not last. Here in District 1 in Huntersville, we have some who are very wealthy, and we have some who experience very poor state in life. We need to make sure that there's the same offerings across the district. And so I think that will stop some of the hemorrhaging that is actually happening in our school system, where we can make sure that they know how much we care instead of how much we know. It's very, very important, and that we're increasing our vocational education for all of our students that may not want to go to college, but we say they need to be college and career ready. Well, let's pay attention to the career ready, because some are ready for a career field. We're just failing them and teaching them that. Well, I think this is not just a CMS problem. I think it's a national issue. When I speak to teachers, when I speak to educators, administrators, it's a national issue. We're actually seeing that across various fields of occupation after the pandemic, where there's not enough workers. But if I was to identify something, of course, student teacher pay, but I think the workforce, I think the work environment. We have to value our teachers. We have to value our educators, not fight against them. One of the things that I would like to run on is building the tripod of education. That means the tripod of education is the student, which is the most important in that tripod, the educator, and the parent. When we can build great relationships of trust between these two, then they can work together. And now, instead of the teacher feeling threatened by a parent coming in and saying, why isn't my child doing this and why is my child doing that? Now they have a relationship and they understand that they're working collaboratively in building the education of this child as they matriculate through this year and through the school. And so I think we have to build a greater morale for our teachers, but I also would like to see not just raising the salary, because I think the salary needs to be raised, but bonuses. I learned that CMS used to do bonuses for teachers from the superintendent level. Dr. Pewsley, he had this program where he was able to take a fund and make bonuses, and the teachers agreed to that. And it was equitable across the board. It wasn't unequitable, but it was equitable, where the bonuses and incentives incentivize teachers to do greater and better. But then also proficiency of skill level. We can't just throw teachers in there. We got to help build them on a basis of time, of a time where over time we can build their skill level. So there are many things that I believe that we see indicative in corporate America that we can bring into CMS. These are some of our most valued workers, and they are instrumental in helping our children succeed. And so we got to give them what they need to succeed. So bonuses, increased pay, but also proficiency in making sure that they have the skills that they need to teach what we're asking them to teach. And we don't have to throw so much more at them. We just got to make sure that they're culturally proficient in teaching what's actually there right now, and then we can grow them more. It's not rocket science. We see it happening in business all day long. We just have to implement it. We got to slow down a little bit, implement it, and build from where we are.